Thank you so much for being with us, and let me share my screen to go in more details. All of you are aware that we are going to talk about academic freedom, and I hope you are familiar with the concepts of the academic freedom. And I will try to explain what is happening inside of Iran regarding the movement that happened in last 9 months. So today in the panel, we are going to have with us some of my friends and colleagues from the international community of Iranian academics that I will explain about it more, that why we have such kind of the academy. We are going to have Dr. Negar Partov, who is a faculty member in New Zealand, and she will explain us about her journey when she was the student in Iran. And of course, her story comes back in the later times than the other audiences. And Farshid Norouzi also will explain about his experience as a recent faculty member who left Iran due to the suppressions that he faced. Azadeh Ganje, who is now based in Germany, she will tell us about her journey as an at-risk scholar, what caused her to leave Iran. And Sina Intisari is going to be the representative of the Iranian students who are under pressure now due to the rules of the government. I'm not going to introduce the panelists in more details. They will tell you more about themselves, especially when they are going to tell me about their journey. And of course, I'm really happy for the organizations that they are with us, and you see the logos here. And I hope that if you are not familiar with them, contact with them, especially if they are related to your region. So regarding why we are interested in the case of academic freedom, you all heard about the tragic death of Mahsa Amini in 16 September 2022, which was happened in the police custody. And then this is her picture few hours, maybe even few minutes before her arrest inside the metro of the Tehran. And you see that it looks that her hijab and also her dressing is completely fine. But anyway, he just beaten, and nobody really knows that what happened in all these hours. And then she went to coma, and 3 days later, she passed away in one of the hospitals of Tehran. And in the 17th of September, the start of the protest happened first in the universities during the day. And of course, it just spread to the streets at night. So the students, especially inside of the universities, were the one who started the protest after her death. So the protest continued almost in all the universities. I will give you the statistic about that. And the 2nd of October 2022, that we call it Bloody Day attack, the severe attack happened in several universities of Iran, especially Sharif University, which is the university of the elites of Iranian community. And it was also in the news that why the government made this kind of attack. So, and in 20th of October, the Minister of the Science, Research and Technology Iran mentioned that from now on, the military sources are going to have officers in the universities of Iran, which is quite strange things. The protest continued until 7th of December last year, which is the Student Day in Iran. And more or less, one can say that the last big protest happened in the 8th of January, which was the anniversary of flight PS752. That maybe you heard about that flight just crashed by the missiles of the IRGC, Ukrainian flight. So what happened? We just realized that this movement is completely different than the other movements that we had in Iran. So with our colleagues and also the Iranian academics in diaspora, we try to make a community, called it International Community of the Iranian Academics, in short, ICOIA. So we established with few friends in October 2022 by making awareness about what's happening in Iran, and of course being the voice of the students and scholars that they are on suppressions in the universities of Iran. So of course you can find more information in this link, and I will also send you the link in the chat. And we did many activities since then, writing the statements, connecting with the students, activists inside of Iran, trying to help them that they are at risk, be their voice, and of course making a detailed report about what's happening in the universities in the last 9 months. And I will share you the report with you, the link of the report. Just briefly explaining what is going on in the University of Iran. Iran has 85 million population, which 2,300,000 of them are students, and we have 86,000 faculty members, which 6,000 of them are professors, and 60% of them are working in public universities and 40% in private universities. In last 9 months, which it is really, really difficult to track all these statistics because there is no really information confirming that. But our studies at ICOYA shows that more than 700 students have been arrested. Protests happen in more than 144 universities. We are not really sure about the number of the attacks, but it could be of more than 100. Among the around 600 people have been killed in the protests. More than 20 of them are students. And among all these students that have been arrested, we know that around 70 of them were the convicted students, and they just sentenced to prison. And recently also we are hearing that many students, they lost their right for education, and the number is approaching to the order of 800. What's happening in Iran is that when you participate in the protest, doesn't matter that you are a student or not, so you should go to the court, and then it's completely illegal issue that you are doing. So these students also, they have sentences from the court. And of course, there is a special issue inside of the Iran which comes to the ideology, which is the disciplinary committee in the University of Iran. I will explain you a bit, and then of course our panelists will try to open the idea, what is this committee? Just giving you a statistic about the court sentences for the students. The students got the prison for 1 up to 7 years. Some of them even get the lashes of up to 74. Many of them, they lost their right for leaving the country for 2 or 5 years. They exiled to another university to continue their educations. And of course, some of them prohibited from doing even online activities and being membership in political groups. And in some rare cases, even their passport become invalidated, so they cannot leave country forever. So what's happening in disciplinary committees? Disciplinary committees started from the beginning of the revolution in Iran in 1979. And we will explain about that in detail. So who are the members of this committee? Is the president of the university, vice president of the student affairs. And of course, in all of these committees, there is agent of the supreme leader, which is a religious person. And of course, security guards, that could be the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So it shows that the presidents of the universities of Iran are part of the suppression tool in Iran. So what is about the history? That we will go to the details of the history more. After the revolution in Iran in February 1979, what happened is that the suppressions started also inside of the universities, but the biggest one happened close to the Cultural Revolution. Means that from the 20th April of 1980 till 1983, almost for 3 years, all the universities of Iran were closed. In all these attacks to the universities to put a pressure to close the universities, at least we know that 30 students has been killed, 7,000 of faculty members been fired, and the 70,000 is half of the faculty members of the Iran in that time, and more than 20,000 students have been expelled from the university just being active in a political groups that they were active those days. After this revolution, cultural revolution, several protests happens inside of the universities. The famous one happened in 1999. 10 years later, the big one happened in 2009 after the results of the presidential election in Iran. The next one happened in 2017. The other one was in 2019. Of course, the biggest one was in the September 2022, which lasts till more or less, let's say, March 2023. And this guy whose picture is here is now the head of the Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution in Iran. And as I told you, the other protest which happened in Iran was in July 1999. 7 students have been killed, 300 of them have been arrested. And unfortunately, at least we know that one of the students who've been arrested that time disappeared completely. So we don't know what happened to this student, Saad Zainali, since then. And unfortunately now also we have several students that they are in prison without any clear evidences for that. 2 famous of them are Amir Hossein Moradi and Ali Younesi, who got the medal in the national and also international astronomy Olympiad in 2019. And this is the picture of the homework of Ali, who just got out in social media almost 2 months ago, that he is studying inside of the prison, and he's the homeworks for the mathematical algebra course. which is really, really sad. Of course, we have students activists for years, and of course they pay for their activities. We have here Leila Hosseinzadeh, who was a master's student in Tehran University, and he was arrested before the uprising in last September, and he was in the prison till January 2023. And we also have Yashar Daroshafa, who was a PhD student when he was arrested. And really ridiculous things is that he defended her PhD thesis inside of the prison. So this is her PhD defense session. So that government use it as a propaganda, saying, okay, even the students can complete their PhD inside of the university. And the funny point is that he was released from the prison 2 weeks after his defense. What happens to the faculty members? At least our statistics shows that more than 100 faculty members been fired or suspended, and they forced to go to the early retirement, and the contract of the many of them who were the visiting professor were canceled. Here you see the picture of the Mortaza Ne'mati, who was the faculty member in Shahid Shamgah University, and when he lost his job, he is now working in a pizzeria. And Farshid Norouzi is going to tell us more about the suppressions to the faculty members in Iran. Unfortunately, we have at-risk scholars in Iran too. Maybe you heard about Nilufar Bayani. Nilufar, born in 1986, he did studies in outside of Iran, but he came back in Iran to work as a biologist. But unfortunately, he convicted in 2019 for 10 years prison sentences, and now she's still in prison since 2019. One of the other at-risk scholars is Ahmad Reza Jalali, born in 1979, who was a faculty member in Sweden. And he came back in Iran in 2016 to visit the family in Iran. And unfortunately, he was being arrested, and it's not really clear that for what reason he was sentenced to death. And he's in prison for more than 7 years now. Umid Kokabi, born in 1982, was an experimental laser physicist. And when we are more or less the same age, when he was arrested, I was a physics student. And I was always worried that how physics can lead to be arrested by my government. So it was really scary for me also too, hearing about his history. He come back to Iran in 2019 from US because he was a PhD student there to visit the family. And unfortunately, he was arrested and then got the 10 years of prison sentences. Unfortunately, a few years after being in prison, he got kidney cancer, and that's why the government released him in 2015, and a few years later, he left Iran. So this is more or less the history that I wanted to open the discussion for you. And of course, you're going to go to the more details that how you can help us by having the action. So I don't want to be the only one who is going to talk. So I just want to open the floor to our panelists. Please, if it's possible for you, open your camera, and I will start with Sina. Do you see my screen?
Yes, okay. Hello.
Okay, great. So I will start with Sina, and then please, Sina, just tell us about your history, and then I will come back to you about the suppressions that's happening for the students in Iran. Please.
Hello. First of all, I sincerely say thanks to you and all the audience for coming and listening to our story, the story of Iranian scholars, Iranian students, and universities in Iran. I deeply believe that to have a better world, we don't need to do anything, just listening to each other's stories. If we truly listen to each other's with our hearts, I believe finally the best actions will naturally and self-motivatedly will find their ways. Due to limitation of the time, I prefer to go directly to the topic because sadly our story is very long. My speech has two parts. The first part, I will talk about why universities and students are the target of the Iran government as an ideological power. And the second round, I will talk about some student issues in universities. Since 1979 revolution, universities in Iran found a special position. If we review, as the NC also explained, if we review the history of the all movements in recent decades after the revolution, we will see universities have always been initiative and at the forefront of the all movements. But the question is, why universities? Since the revolution, the government has heavily restricted and censored all public space in Iran. in Iran, no independent media, no independent institution, no independent NGO, and no independent union has a right to exist, let alone acting or acting in order to organizing and gathering individuals and redirecting their power to their demand. Therefore, it can be said that in such an environment, the university had to cover the absence of the public space, and they have to play the role of other institutions as well. So, if not say the only universities, certainly universities are one of the most powerful public space in Iran in the last 4 decades. That's why the government has made a significant effort to awaken university institutions in various ways, but probably some of my friends and colleagues are here to mention the ways that the government using for awakening the universities. This is the why university in Iran are important, because today their responsibility are more than just producing the science. The university in Iran are the only chance for the young generation to gather together and sharing the idea and demands. Universities, students, and researchers in Iran have simultaneously 2 responsibilities. First, generating the science like everywhere, every university in the world, and also practicing their social responsibility by protecting the social values such as freedom and equality. If you ask me, in the condition of the Iran, sometimes the second responsibility is even more important and fundamental than the first and the main one. So as a result, and according to the topic of our event, we can see how an ideological government, by restricting the other public space, has shifted the functional role of the university from science production toward the political activism. So it was my first part of my speech about the topic of our event, and I tried to explain that why the university and the student in Iran are the target of the government. So
thank you so much, Sina. Yeah, thank you so much for opening the discussion. Maybe it's the time to go to Negar, because Negar also is a bit older than us, in a sense that she experienced more and she left Iran many years ago, but she's following the news very well, and of course she can tell us what happened in the Cultural Revolution in Iran, why that happened, and why they called it really Cultural Revolution. Do we really needed something like called cultural one? And what happened in this Cultural Revolution? And is this still continued here? And then how we can see the consequence of this kind of the revolution inside of Iran? Of course, this was not the revolution that people wanted, but it's forced by the regime. So Negar, please go ahead.
Greetings to everyone, and thank you for the organizers and for Shape C and for NCA, who did a lot of work to put this event together. And kia ora, as we say in New Zealand. So welcome everyone to this panel discussion. Yes, I am the first generation of students who was in 1999 a student uprising, and then many of us left Iran after that, particularly because the situation was becoming more and more dangerous and problematic. I want to kind of go back to what Sina mentioned and give you a little bit of idea about how the Iran system is different from Taliban and what happened that they got involved into this problem that they created for themselves. So as a political Islamist, they could come to Iran and say that we don't need revolution, we don't need universities, but they couldn't, because the whole idea was to create a modern Islamic, even to the Islamicists of 1979, it was supposed to be a modern Islamic revolution that brought modernity, kind of married science and ideology together. In fact, if you think about what NC and Sina mentioned about the Cultural Council, the Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution, the idea was to create a system in universities that bring science and religion, particularly the ideology of Islamic revolution, together. their counterpart in Afghanistan, when they got to power, they said, Taliban said, we don't need education. So they got rid of universities. But as Sina mentioned, universities became a major problem for Islamic Revolution because for one side, it became the major site of resistance. It became the public space where discourses and debates and critiques of the regime was very popular and was happening quite extensively. And because of that, the universities got closed 2 years after the revolution for 3 years and through the Cultural Revolution. And they did two major strategies they imposed on revolutions. Was to purge the universities from all the university academics who were during the Shah's time, who had a position. So they all got sacked, and thousands of them lost their jobs. And the other one, also university students, everybody who wanted to go to university at the time was supposed to be surveyed. They would come to the neighborhood and ask the neighbors whether people would go to prayers, would they kind of go to Friday prayers and different modes of ideological rituals that the Islamic Republic was promoting quite extensively. And of course, there were academics, like some of them are in United States of America now and teach and have a very good life, like Dr. Abdul Karim Surush, who at the time was the architect of thinking about universities as factories that were building ideological products, ideological scientists whose job was to marry science and ideology together. So in 1999, when we started to uprise, it was the first time that we thought it is an opportunity. As the reformist government came into power, we found out that it was an opportunity for us to have a voice. And that's how the new student uprising started to take shape. I just mentioned something and then I leave the floor to our next panelist. But students and universities never stopped resisting this oppression. So we have always, in 1990s and 2000s, from the moment that the universities started again to operate under the Islamic Revolution, some of the academics who still maintain their position in universities very secretly were teaching us, and generation after us who are NCS and Azadeh and Sina, about how to think critically. So that tradition never died in universities, but it has been oppressed. And that's why these oppressive techniques have matured in order to make sure that the silencing strategies work, because as they develop, so do the academics as university students also resist against them, and their resistant techniques evolve as well. So thank you, NCA, for giving me the opportunity. I will come back if you have any question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Negar. I also want to thank you, because it's not more or less 2:30 in New Zealand. I'm really glad to have you here, and sorry for that. You can also leave almost in half an hour. I know that you should go to work tomorrow. So thank you so much for opening this great discussion that governments tried to have the ideological products, but it seems that it completely failed. So let me continue with Azadeh, because she left Iran almost a year ago, and then she will tell you us more about the suppression that she faced as a faculty member there, especially that her subject is related to the art. And now the Art University of Tehran is one of the leading universities in Iran during the protests, and they never stopped in the last 9 months. So Azadeh, can you please tell us more what's happening specifically in your university with art students, and then what you faced that leads you to leave Iran?
I say hello to everyone, and again my thanks to all the organizers and also audience who put time to talk about this very important matter. Also, I would like to thank you, NCA, for your accountability about all these issues. Yes, as you mentioned, that's the truth. Art students in Tehran, and in particular Art University of Tehran and Tehran Art University, which are two very connected performing art and visual art schools, were among the ones who actually started the first protest inside the university campus. And then they tried to join people who were actually gathering out of the campus. Perhaps some of our audience know that the University of Tehran has a very important strategical space and position in the geography of Tehran. It is positioned in a very important street of Engelab, the Revolution Street. So most of the time, if there is a protest, it happens around the campus of the university. To mention, maybe it's nice to say, or maybe it is valuable to mention why this is happening inside the art university, and in particular the universities of humanities, because it's also mostly about the topic of humanities and art. It's very well connected to what Negar mentioned about the Cultural Revolution. After Cultural Revolution, we had a lot of problem in our syllabus of courses in the University of Art, and also in general in humanities. Many things were changed. Many professors left the country. Many topics and subjects were actually censored. But at the same time, I think many faculty members, students, kept trying their best to bring in the new methods, philosophies, and everything which is actually helping spreading the knowledge of the world in the field to the students. So all in all, being in the University of Art meant being in a very vibrant, active atmosphere, in an atmosphere which actually kind of helps you to get connected to people out of this university, because you're not only dealing with scientific matters, you are mostly dealing with social matters. You are talking and performing about people on the stage, that they are real, they are out there, and they have issues. So I think these two are very important factors in this case. First of all, they needed to have access to freedom in expressing their art and their thoughts through art, which is very much censored. The other one is art is very much connected to everyday life, and it is kind of impossible to actually be indifferent to that. However, the authorities try to promote a very special method and style of art which is indifferent to social and political happenings in the country. I think we already saw many productions during the last 40 years which are named or labeled abstract, but they're not truly abstract. They're rather trying to get rid of this big burden of censorship. So what happened in the art university and what happened to me in particular was a constant fight for having access to freedom of knowledge, a constant fight for having access to the right of appearance. It's interesting that right of appearance in the field of art is a very important topic, because as an artist, as someone who makes productions to be seen in the society, it is important for you to be able to appear in the society as you wish and as you want. So it was not only about the art students themselves, but it was also about how active artists have been during this uprising and before. Many artists and many activists were the ones who were invited inside the university to give lectures, who were working as lecturers in the university. So despite the very limited syllabus of teaching, there have been always something happening under the layers, under the official layer of humanities and art studies. So what I would like to mention here, to summon what I said, is it is important to know the lack of academic freedom in Iran is also so much affecting syllabus of studies, affecting who is actually present in the university. As you mentioned in your presentation about who is the president of the university, who can achieve such a position. So in art, I think it was always a problem because they didn't have enough propaganda members to bring into art field. There was always a constant need for real artists because it is not anymore possible to actually fill this gap with false statistics. And by this, I would like to give the stage to other panelists here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Azadeh. I'm completely agree with you that with all these suppressions happens in the case of the, at least in the case of the art that you experienced it. Of course, they couldn't silence the students, and I'm really proud of the students of art in all around Iran that they really did great job in last 9 months. And once I remember that I tweeted that if they were my students, because I saw their performance regarding the play and also music and all these things in the Women Life Freedom Revolution. And I tweet that if they were my students, of course, I have no talent in art, but if they were my students, all of them could pass the course without, you know, being in the class, because what they are performing is exactly what we really expected from them. So then they really did, they performed in real life, you know, in a real stage that they had it with all this suppression, and not in the real in a course that they were forced to learn the things that they are not really they are compulsory art, let's say, not real art. So thank you so much for sharing with us. So let's go to Farshid Nourouzi. Farshid was a faculty member in last September, and he forced to leave Iran. So Farshid, can you please let us know what happened to you, that big idea to the people, give the idea to people that how supporting the students can lead to losing the job in Iran. So how simple reaction can lead to that, please.
Hello everyone. I hope that you have my voice in a very clear manner.
We hear you.
Okay, very good. Please. So I would like to thank, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event. And I know that you have been active and engaged over the past 4 or 5 weeks. So thank you. And I can see some of my French friends here. So I would like to say bonjour à tous aussi. Before I start my talk, there is one very important point that I would like to mention. And that is this very important fact that I'm not talking about these 2 years, because the lobbyists of the regime have tried to say that, for example, I don't know, the administration of this president is different from the administration of other presidents. So they are trying to promote a kind of bifurcated, dichotomous, binary picture of the Iranian politics, in which we have hardliners and moderates. But the fact is that there are no moderates. Moderates are not allowed to run in elections in Iran. So what I'm trying to say, what I'm going to say, my dear colleagues, is that I'm talking about the suppressive measures of the Iranian government over the past 4 decades. So before answering NCS question, I would like to mention two very important points about how teachers are employed in Iran, how university teachers are employed. So we need to be aware of this very important fact that employment of full-time teachers happens only after a very thorough and comprehensive investigation of religious and political affiliations of both the applicant and his family. If you are not an active pro-regime figure, your background must at least show silence, quote unquote, and neutrality. Thus, only 2 types of people can be employed in the Iranian universities as teachers. Either you are a regime sympathizer, or you are extremely silent. Anyway, but if you can skillfully, and I can say slyly, pass the strict employment procedures in Iran, and you can turn into a teacher, you can become a university teacher, there is no guarantee that you're going to remain one in the coming years. So in order to have a professional profession in Iran, I mean, if you're an assistant professor and you want to become an associate professor or full professor, you need to... I'm afraid.
Please go ahead, I just unmute.
D'accord. So in order to change your professional status, you need to have an acceptable quote-unquote cultural dossier. That is, you are expected to pass several in-service courses of ideological indoctrination. And as my dear friend Azadeh said, both your classes and your syllabi are closely checked by the regime representatives in universities known as harasatis. So it can be translated as the people who guard the security. And there is also a very, I can say, intricate system of espionage to find dissident voices in universities. And unfortunately, a considerable number of administrative staff in Iranian colleges and universities cooperate with the regime on different levels. And when I used to teach at the University of Mazandaran in Iran as an assistant professor, it is no exaggeration to say that over 70% of the staff worked as eyes and the ears of the system. And sadly, the regime has also incorporated some students to spy on the teachers, on the fellow students. And during the Jina revolution, some dissident teachers, unfortunately, were condemned because of these spies, both as in the administrative staff and also the students and their fellow colleagues. And the officials as well, we know that they are closely, they have close ties with IRGC forces, with the intelligence forces. And what happened to me, because I had an administrative position, I was the vice dean of the faculty at the University of Mazandaran, and because many classes were not held at that time in the beginning of the Mahsa revolution, because the students were trying to show their solidarity with people out there in the streets and those who were killed and their families. I was under this very extreme, I can say, pressure to give the names of the striking students and teachers. And when I didn't do that, I was forced to resign, and then I left Iran 10 days after my resignation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Farshid, for sharing with us your experience. You mentioned the sad point that, how the promotion in the case of the faculty members, and even from the beginning, the hiring of the faculty members happened in Iran. And it's really sad because that somehow take out the hope that we have in future for having the really great revolution, in the sense of the changing from bad to good after the revolution happens in Iran, in a sense that we are really looking for that. And I hope that that's one of the maybe reasons that people always asking that the students are the leading ones in the revolution, and also after the death of Mahsa, and why nothing happened in the case of the faculty members. And now maybe it's really clear that, unfortunately, being hired in Iran as a faculty member and getting promoted, it will be affected by that. And of course, if you don't be silent, your promotion can last forever. And of course, this forever is not forever. So you will be kicked out from the university. And that's what happened for 100 faculty members that I mentioned that they were not silent in last years. And of course, when they wanted to get rid of them with the reason that saying, okay, now we don't have you, they just, put the point on the sense that you couldn't promote it, let's say in 10 years that you expected to do it, and you should be kicked out. So then always there is a ideological issue for promotion, but they always put the pressure on the case of the scientific point of view, but nobody really can realize that that happens just because of the ideological promotion that happened inside of the universities. And that's why, as I mentioned, the committees of the universities of Iran, in that committees, the religious, the representative of the leader, the supreme leader, who is a religious person, is present, and of course now also the military forces are there. So it's really, really difficult to pass that barrier. So you should be extremely silent. If you don't keep silent, you are forced to leave or losing your job. This is the minimum penalty that you are going to get. Since you are not going to have Negar, and she should leave because it's really early in the morning for her. I just wanted to come back to Negar, saying that, okay, we discussed about this ideological issue that's happening inside of the Iran, and we just see that it has been failed. And do you really have any hope that something is going to change? Do we have a hope that inside of the universities, at least from the top-down approach, because from the bottom up, we know that the students are really active. And do you think that all these pressures that happen, and especially increased a lot in last 9 months, that we see it in the news and in social media, do you think that the government will be really successful to silence the students and also the faculty members? Is it possible really to continue this cultural revolution till the government is in power or not?
Yeah, thank you, Ansia. No, it doesn't matter. I'm very pleased to be here and having this conversation. Some of us never actually stopped fighting the Islamic Republic, even when we came out of Iran years ago. But what is beautiful, and what I think is the major failure of the Islamic Republic in suppressing universities, and particularly students and academics, is to acknowledge what the university students and academics like Farshid and like Azadeh are fighting against, and then see that how this fighting can result or not. So the first of all is that the reason that you still have multiple layers of intelligence operators, revolutionary guards, Basij, who's the militia, as well as official reporters and intelligence operators in universities, is that even the Islamic Republic knows that they can't win this fight. And this fight continues. Now, what they have, the reason that university students and academics haven't been successful so far, and there I want to change the topic to say that what are the levers and the strategies that the Islamic Republic has. So the Islamic Republic has three main strategy and power points that allows them to continue this fight. Otherwise, they would have lost it years ago. So the first one is, as Farshid and Azadeh said, they place people in the positions of managerial. So nearly pretty much all the managers of people in managerial positions in universities are all come from the backgrounds that are connected with the Islamic Revolution Guardian Corps or is related to the government. So they're very, very closely connected. So that placement is important because it gives them positions of power. The second reason that they have been able to continue this fight in universities is that Iran is a rentier state. And as you know, rentier states make money out of natural resources. So Iran has a lot of oil, gas, many natural minerals. And because of those, it means that it can substitute the failures that it has in universities. So rentier states means that if you are sympathizers, as Farshid said, with the regime, if you are very quiet, if you don't say a word, you can get benefits. There are grants that come to you. There's rentier states. I mean, I don't know if you have heard about Jamile Alamul-Huda, who went to Venezuela and said some like major nonsense about the role of women and education in a country that has over 60% of women going to tertiary education, which is by itself shows you how resistance operates. But if you look at her background, she owns a center that is funded exclusively by the money that comes from rentier states. So there is a there is a financial aspect that, while we don't get a chance to speak quite extensively about it, is very important. They develop centers, they develop positions, academic positions, grants, travelings, publications. So there's a lot of money that comes into this fight from the Islamic Republic. And that means that they do have another leverage to continue this. And the third one is that they create a culture, they have spread a culture across universities. And that culture is the mistrust amongst the academics and administrative components of universities, as well as managerial. So everybody, and this is an intelligence model that they copied from Russians, particularly during the communist era, but even now, is that they continuously, they have layers of intelligence. So you create a mistrust, so you can't even trust your colleague. And because of that, they create gender discriminatory policies to create divisions between women and men. They create ethnic discriminatory policies, so they create problems between students who come from less privileged areas to ones that come from the centers. So these creations of divisions and these cultures that they spread across universities is the third strategy that they have in order to kind of beat the university. But as Azadeh mentions, and I was listening to her thinking about in 1999 as well as now, even at that time we didn't have mobile or anything, we had fax. And I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember those times, but even that time we were united. So the students in arts were united with humanities and social sciences, with the STEM students. We were all together, and that unity that we create and has been functioning and now materialized in what NCA said as, for example, systems like Iranian International Community of Iranian Academics, is that these, when we all get bullied, we actually unite together. And now we have a much better platforms. We have an international voice that is operating. And I don't think they can sustain it. But I think because they do have these strategies, we need to raise a lot of awareness globally. And we need to mention that these are leverage and these are strategies for oppression. And if we do not have a voice as an international community of academics, all of us, and not have the knowledge about this, this fight can be continued. So your question, Ansia, will they ever succeed? No, they will not succeed. But will they ever continue fighting? Yes, because universities are the focal point for the Islamic Republic. They need the credibility in the international community, and that comes from universities. So for them, this fight is an existential fight that allows them to survive, and they will continue. In fact, I believe even if they would allow some social freedoms in the streets, if they would kind of give up on some one or another fights that they have with people in the civil society, they would never give up fight against academics and against the students. So we also have to keep on fighting. So that's kind of my position. Thank you, Nsia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Negar. You mentioned 3 points that I'm just trying to wrap up, saying that you mentioned 3 M's regarding the managers, money, and also mistrust. So these are the 3 pillars of the government inside of the universities, putting the managers in a position, high position, and also the money that they have investing for making the propaganda, of course, but with their ideology, going directly to their ideology, and also the mistrust that happens among the colleagues and also between the students and also the colleagues, and also in high level with the managers and also directors of the university. Thank you so much for telling us why this ideology still continued after 45 years. And you mentioned something regarding the situation of the universities that gives the credibility to the government of Iran. And I want to mention and ask Sina about because we know that in Iran, as also Negar mentioned, 60% of the students, at least in the bachelor level, are females. And when you, even in the STEM subjects, and when you tell that to the other people, even in the developed society, they say, okay, that's really great. Of course, probably the government or state made some ways to increase the number of the females inside the University of Iran. But I want to come back to Sina to say that, well, how it could be that females are in general are in more suppressions than the other people inside of the society. And that's why we have the Women Life Freedom Revolution right now in Iran. And how it could be that the 60% of the students inside of the University of Iran are just females, and what happened to them when they go to the higher level of the education. So Sina, please.
Hi again. Yes, you know, the most repeated question that we asked that what does it mean woman in woman life freedom, and what do you why you specify woman in this? I just wanted to say that at the you know, the first years that the Islamic Republic came to the power, they executed the women that she was a prime minister of the education ministry of the Iran. I think these actions, I don't want to talk about the it was legal or illegal. And this action shows that at the first year of the revolution, they execute the women and the image of the women in the Iran. And after 14 years, we see the reflection of that action. That in Iran, they wanted to actually omit the women from the society, and they're very admiring that we see that with all the obstacles, with all the limitation that the government put on their way, they could pass. And as you mentioned, in the university, we see that even the number of the women somehow is more than the even boys students. Yeah, we see that it's this slogan, woman, life, freedom, it comes from the heart of all Iranian. Forget about their sexuality. That all at the same time believe that we came to the new era, that in this new era, the women and the men are equal. And another things that I wanted to add to my speech is that I want to just review the other issues that the students are faced in the universities. And I wanted to mention that it's not about just recent months after the Mahsa Amini. Of course, after the recent protests that we know as the Mahsa Amini revolution, due to the importance role of the student in those protests, pressure on the university has significantly increased. However, there is no exact statistic, as the NCA mentioned, but at least over 800 students being arrested and transferred to prison. And according to another statistic that recently published, in the last recent 2 months, nearly 100 students received disciplinary sanction during the current academic semester. This sanction often suspending their studies for several semesters or even forcing them to change their university location. But when we talk about the suppression and controlling system in the university, we don't just want to talk about the recent months or after the Mahsa Amini revolution. During the many years, students have become accustomed to the presence of the security forces. all their behavior is observed by the security system. From the moment that you as a student or as a professor enter to the university, the security system check your ID card to let you get in, sometimes check your bags and check your appearance. And also, can you imagine that when you enter to the university, there is a placard, something like a checklist in the entrance of all universities to tell a student what can be worn within the university. And you will see that in that checklist, even they interfere into the smell of the perfume that you use and choose. So you can imagine in this kind of the university, all the behavior of the students are monitored by the cameras for the even smallest things, like not respecting to the sexual separation law. Students are called upon to the disciplinary committee. But still, the issue of the students are not limited to just Islamic rules or Islamic dress code. There are many scientific subjects, especially related to the humanities, which conducting any research on them are not permitted. Because it may cause some conflict in their ideology base. And also, there is a famous slogan that related to the Islamic Republic that openly promoted discrimination at all levels. It is said that the commitment is more important than expertise. Commitment means the religious commitment is more important than expertise or scientific skills. So can you imagine the consequence of such a slogan in the university? Many students, despite having a high academic ranks, are deprived of education. So as we know them as a star student and a student with a star. On the other hand, there are many students and professors with low academic rankings who because they are politically aligned with the system, easily achieve to the higher degree and position. So, in my opinion, as in the case of the Amir Hossein Moradi and Arash Moradi and Amir Hossein Younesi, the two Iranian elite students who despite having international scientific accomplishment in the field of the astronomy and physics, they have been in prison for more than 4 years without no reason. So it's a clear example that demonstrates the Islamic Republic doesn't care to scientific value. And the reality, as the Negar mentioned, the reality is that the ideological system, the Islamic Republic, they don't want university itself. They just want to use the name of the university for a kind of institution for just validating and admiring their ideological value. But the university, the meaning that we have in our mind, they don't need it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sina, for more somehow summarizing what's the situations on the universities in Iran, especially on the students. Of course, the list is much larger than the one that you mentioned, but that's how is it. So then let's since we talked about the situation of the females in Iran, and you talked about the suppressions on the female students, that if they don't wear the proper job, even recently, because you're in the exam time in Iran, they are not even allowed to pass their exam. So even if they go to the exam, they are not allowed to take the exam. Of course, if they don't take the exam, so they're gonna get 0 grade, and of course that's in the average of their courses, and maybe they will not be able to continue their education. So this is part of the suppressions inside the university that we face. Let me go to Azadeh as a faculty member who worked in Iran for several years, and of course she faced also a lot in the case of the female as a faculty member there. So what suppressions that you face there, that you still think that it is still there? And of course it's increasing in last 9 months. And then do you see that these kind of suppressions will be able to somehow reduce the passion of the students to not fight for their faith? Please, Azadeh.
Yes, please. So in particular, there is maybe it's better to mention how a faculty member is actually accepted as a faculty member in the structure of universities in Iran, to mention how female faculty members, or if we can even say how diverse gendered faculty members have problems to get inside the university, and what are they facing in this process. So usually as a faculty member, you are accepted through a tenure track system. And in this tenure track system, first of all, you have to approve, like everywhere in the world, that you are academically a very passionate and also a well-deserved scholar to be in this position. And there's also an intention to hire faculty members who already studied out of Iran, which is also very surprising. In particular, in Tehran University, there is this intention to hire faculty members who studied out of the country. The other criteria that they check is about how you're actually loyal to the ideology of the system, how good as a Muslim you are practicing, which is another thing. So it is the ideology of the system, the state, the totalitarian system, how loyal you are to that. They check your background. And the other thing is how, as a Muslim, if you are a Muslim, and there is more chance for a Muslim to enter the university than any other, even officially acknowledged religions, how you are practicing. In the case of women, it is always a very big question about hijab. And this is not like they meet you, they have meetings with you and ask you about your hijab, or meet you as a real person and check how do you actually dress yourself. It is about a wide and unknown kind of intelligence service going to where you have lived through all the years of your life, asking from your neighbors and people who know you if you are a good Muslim woman, which means if you are actually having proper hijab, if you are, and that's not the only question. The second question, which many female university members faced during their interview, which is very interesting, is, and they ask me too, what happens if a student of you doesn't have proper hijab? What would be your reaction? So the question is like, how would you work for us? How would you function for us as the eye in the class to check that? And this is a question. The other question and the other criteria is women, female scholars who are already married and have children has priority over than female scholars who are single and don't have children, which does not have anything to do with their academic quality. I think everyone here believes so. So this is another criteria which gives you some priority for being hired as a woman, as a female member of the faculty. The other thing which is different with men is how you actually have personal connections with your students. So if you are a female professor and if you have very intimate but proper connection with your students, usually you are more questioned. What is your connection? Why do you have connections out of the university with your students? It is not about taking care of the students. It's rather more about monitoring and surveillance of any connection happening between human beings inside the university, and in particular females. I would also like to bring your attention to problem of people with diverse gender intentions. And in the case of art universities, we have two methods of acceptance. First of all, there is a big exam which every student have to take in the country to be able to enter the university. The second is an interview, and this interview is being done by the faculty members, which are not all of them very much free in their functions as a scholar. And some of them are even members of the propaganda. So when we have these kinds of students who come to the interview for art schools, there's always a big problem, because they are mostly judged at the first hand by their gender intentions. They are actually judged by their tendencies. How do they look like? Is there a danger if they are from a queer community? And if something like this is actually being suspected, then this student has either is out of the wheel of choice, or will face many other oppressions during their study. So I think this is also important to mention. We are not only facing gender inequality with these two binary genders, we are talking about diverse genders who face oppression in the university.
Yeah, thank you very much, Azadeh. That reminds me maybe a sad story that I had in Iran, that the only reason maybe that I chose that university to apply for that as a faculty member when I resigned, of course, in last September, was that I was here that there is no investigation there. You know, I didn't have such kind of ideological interview. It was somewhat exceptional institute because of the founder of the institute tries to attract the people's not in the ideology of the government. So it was really also challenging for him. So that was one of the reasons that I chose that university in a really small city, which was really, although it was really close to the capital, but it was not a really developed city in a sense that, okay, you want to stay there forever, hold your faculty position. But I just chose that place because I knew that before going to the promotion of the associate professor, you will not be going to investigate. So I said, okay, I can be safe for a few years, and who knows what's going to happen. So I never become an associate member, so I resigned my faculty member. So I'm really happy that I never be in a room with, let's say, the intelligence forces of the regime to answer the questions that, of course, I never believe in them. So that's why I left my position after 7 years. I'm really happy that I didn't pass this investigation in my life. So thank you so much for yourselves. And I think that for not becoming the discussion more boring, and since we have several questions in chat, maybe it's better to answer some of them, and then that can also open some other conversation. And after that, I can continue with my own questions if we had more. So one question that has been asked is related to that. One main question is that of course they asked me, but of course we did the panel together. The question is that what is the hope that you want to achieve with all these activities like this one? So Farshid, can you please answer this question? Of course, the other ones also, if you have something to add.
Would you please repeat the question?
What is the hope you want to achieve after these activities like this one?
Well, there are several objectives. But for me, I can think that one of the most important methods and ways the international community, academic community, can help us is that they can cut off the relations with oppressive teachers, because we have been trying to provide an archive, a data related to the names and the actions of those academics in Iran who have been collaborating with the regime to oppress students and teachers. So I think that would be great if the international community, if academic journals, prestigious academic journals, refuse to cooperate with these people. That would be a very great step, because those who are oppressing those academics in Iran who are working with the government would know that there is no way out. So if you're working with the government, if you're oppressing students and teachers, then you are going to lose your status and prestige in the international community. So I think that that's a very good way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rashid. Maybe we continue this discussion by saying that, okay, by this making awareness about what's really happening inside of Iran, because the suppression is much beyond than the academic freedom that happens in other countries. So people are not really aware, and also they are not familiar with how an ideology can really influence science in that case. So that's why we want to have these panels more with several generations of Iranians, that they try to resist in Iran, and of course do the best job that they can do it, to not be in the swimming in the direction of the government, force them to do it. But and then also they are also outside of Iran, they try to make the community to be the voice of the Iranians. And of course there's some actions that we can do it. So maybe I can come back to Negar, to saying that, to explain that, so what kind of the actions the other communities can do if we make the awareness.
A couple of responsibilities that we have as international academics, and one of them is to think about how corruption can undermine the credibility of institutions. So part of it is our conscious responsibility of supporting equality and equity, which we always do in our research and our investigations. But I think the other part is that we actually have a commitment to finding the truth, and this truth is important. We all send our articles to be reviewed by other academics because we want to make sure that the credibility of these publications are important for us, and that's actually a completely separate issue from raising the matter of justice. There is also the matter of accountability and the matter of transparency that we all need to pursue. And in fact, I think this is a major responsibility for all of us. So there are many other factors that I think we can talk about it, but I want to be very selfish, and I saw some very great questions on the line, so I can take a minute to answer, to just give comments about a couple of them. Faraz, I think it is absolutely fantastic. You mentioned something about Muslim Brotherhood. I've done a lot of studies about Muslim Brotherhood. Khomeini had quite a lot of affinity to Sayyid Qutb. Ahmadinejad was the translator of the milestone. They have had quite a lot of interactions. So a lot of techniques they have been using is commonly shared. So it's not that the Islamic Republic copies Muslim Brotherhood, but they actually share techniques. And there are a lot of discussions we can have later on. But one of the things is that they both contributed to setting up Muslim Brotherhood offices across Europe in late 80s. So these ideological connections is very important. Can I give a comment about Marxism? Yes, Lek, you're correct. Marxism was, as a philosophy, was very fascinated and interested to create an equality of distribution of wealth and distribution, but the problem is the implementation of Marxism, and it has happened quite a lot. So while you can distribute equally and centralize and distribute money to different points, the equality of opportunity in the implementation of Marxism doesn't happen often. And examples in different countries show us that. So one of the reasons that the Cold War ended the way it did is because this is not working because of the problems of inequality in accessing opportunity and freedom. So that's my point about that. But I think there was another one, Mina, who wrote a very great question about, sorry, I just, so I don't make a mistake. Oh, sorry, yes, it's here. It's about how the resistance works. So I teach security and philosophies of security and strategy. So I believe that Iran civil society is a very smart civil society, and they try different different styles of resistance. So you see, NCA was talking about 1999 and then 2007 and 2009. So occasionally they do uprising, and then they start dragging the Islamic Republic's resources. So for you to, as a totalitarian regime, to have credibility, part of it is to be able to silence everyone. So if you have to put quite a lot of resources and money and funding and security guards and intelligence operators into your academic systems in order to maintain the silence, it means that the resistance is operating very successfully. Because if you win, you never do that. So one of the things that that students and academics do is that they move between these two modes of resistance. So sometimes they come up, and of course they are dealing with one of the most brutal regimes with lots of power and military forces and intelligence power. So they do lose quite a lot of people, and it happens, as NCA mentioned at the beginning of this panel. And then they go back and they change their style of resistance. And one day it is just not accepting to have a different to have a different coffee shops and universities and sexually segregated coffee shops. The other one is to resist against compulsory hijab. The other day is for male students to go behind the podium and talks about poverty and the mismanagement of universities. So I actually think that Iranian academics and students have been very successful, because if it was like any other, and I can think about some other totalitarian regimes in the world, that they don't spend that much money in their universities, that they have been able to silencing their students and academics, and Iran hasn't. So I think that it depends how you define success, but I believe that the strategies are a little bit different. And just one more sentence about connections. Yes, we do have connections. So I do have the privilege to be the co-president of the International Community of Iranian Academics. And we do have many different connections, whether through our personal connections. So some of us still have friends who are teaching in Iran or are involved in universities. So that's one connection. But we also advertise quite a lot about students and academics being able to connect with us, and they have. So many of them come to us and talk to us, and we have the connection. Whether we can officially and publicly talk about the projects that we do together, no, we can't. But we do have a lot of projects that we work together with academics inside Iran. So thank you, NCA. Sorry about taking time.
No, it was really great. Thank you so much, Nagar, for explaining some of the questions, answering many of them. Yeah, actually, one of the questions was that how the community of the Iranian academics in diaspora really trying to help the academics in Iran. The point is that if you go to the website of the ICOIA, you just see a few pictures and also a few names. That because, of course, although we are living outside of the Iran, because we are really worried, we have the families in Iran. So we are really worried that if our names will be in the community that is really working against the regime, we will lose our right to come back home, to even to visit our families in several years. So that's why you see that the people that you see on the website of the ICOIA are not the ones that they are really, these are the ones that they don't somehow, let's say, care, losing their rights to coming back home. But many of them, of course, because of the family issues and all these things, they really like to come back their beloved homeland, because it's their right to do it. So then even you can imagine that how the critical the situation is. Even the ones that they are living outside of Iran for years and years, they fear to come back in Iran. I mentioned about Ahmad Reza Jalali, that who was the faculty member outside of the Iran, and when he come to the Iran to visit the families, he's just arrested and then sentenced to death, and he's in prison for 7 years. So you can imagine that how big is the suppression regarding all Iranians, even the academics, that they are living abroad for years and years, and they don't even communicate with Iranian academics inside of the Iran. But then since the government see that maybe they can be helpful for their propaganda, for their military issues, they arrest them when they come back to Iran. That's what happened to Omid Kokabi. And then he was in the prison for 5 years, and he just released because of the kidney cancer, and then pressure from many scientists, because he was really intelligent guy and just prison for really nonsense issue. But of course, we see that in the case of the Amir Hossein Moradi and Ali Younesi, that doesn't work, that they are in prison for 4 years. And I just wanted to mention that Ali Younesi and Amir Hossein Moradi, they are just 22 years old. And can you imagine that how it could be the suppression, that you arresting your elites? So then I hope that makes the awareness what's going on. So maybe I can just come back to Sina. So we are doing these panels with the hope that, we also have the help from the outside of from international community, at least regarding the Iranian students. So from your point of view, Sina, do you think how the international academics can help Iranian students, the ones that they are inside of Iran, or also they are the ones that they are outside?
Yes. Of course, as I mentioned at the first of my speech, that just sharing our story can be helpful, because it just by expanding the awareness about what exactly happened in Iran, because we all have a same experiences. The people who are attending this event are from different generation, but we have a same experiences. So at the moment we have the same motivation, and we have a lot of connections with the still a lot of our friends are still in Iran, and we are making a lot of connections with the international organization, and we report them what's happening in Iran, and we can also do some action against those who support this system, even professor, even those who are take a part in the disciplinary community. And another thing that I just wanted to mention, that last month I was to talk about one of the student activists in Iran, and because in the last 2 months there was a lot of suppression in the university. Many of the activist students received some from the disciplinary committee, received many sanctions, like I asked them, so what do you think about the future? What do you think about the future of the university? Do you because all of the student activists that I knew was in trouble. Some of them fired from the university, some of them in prison. So I asked them, what do you think about the future? And they told me, it's just enough to look the history of the way that we came from the first years of the Islamic Revolution so far. Yes, the government are more stronger than us, but we are more than them, and the future belongs to us. And that's why it's obvious that in the next decade, next 2 decades, we can cope up with these things, and we can cope up with the government. So just in this short time, in maybe 1 decade, maybe 2 decades, in this short time, we need the support of the everybody who listen our voice, support of the international scholar, support of the international organization. But after this time, we will pass, and in that time we would have a good memory of this cooperation, yeah, this was the good news that I wanted to tell everybody about the future. So people who are in Iran are very hopeful and very energetic, and that's why we are also receive that energy and will continue to be their voice.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sina, and then for your commitment in this panel. I'm aware that you are going to have a course as a student now, so if you want, you can leave not to miss your course, and we can continue with the other panelists. Thank you so much for being with us, and also we will continue the connections. Thank you so much. So let me continue with other suggestions regarding the helps for the academics that they are at risk. Farshid, you were the one who forced to leave Iran, and also you resigned when you were in France as a sabbatical leave, and then you forced to stay there. So what happens to you when you lost your job and you were in France with, of course, short visa? So, and what do you expect, and what do you think that the international community can help the students and scholars that they are at risk?
Thank you for the question. Well, the feminists say that personally is political. So if I'm talking about my own case, in fact, I'm talking about tens of hundreds of other cases in Iran who have not been lucky like me to be able to come out and find a position. So I should say that it was not really easy for me. And so it took me around 6 months to find a position here in France with the help of Scholars at Risk, host program in France, but it was really tough. It was really tough. It took a lot of time, and money-wise, stress-wise, everything. It was not easy. But I know many people right now in Iran, many academics who unfortunately have not been able to find a position. They have lost their job. And as you kindly said at the very beginning of the session, especially visiting professors were highly persecuted, my dear colleagues, and they have lost their jobs because of their support for the Mahsa, for the Jina revolution, and now they are unemployed. And they cannot find any other teaching position in Iran because of their background, because they have been fired once. So, I do support the cause of the Ukrainian people, and I do support what is happening now in the in the international community. They support Ukrainian scholars, Ukrainian students here in France or elsewhere. But I would call on international community to help Iranian scholars as well, and that would be a great help if we can have, for example, a kind of a scholarship, a kind of fund to support those scholars, those students in Iran who have been persecuted to find a safe position in different countries.
Thank you very much, Farshid. I know that you passed a really hard journey to be able somehow, let's say at least regarding the job, settled down in France, but you see that even the ones that they are outside of Iran, they are really in critical position. In my case, after 9 months, I don't have any position yet, and there is no real hope that I will be able to find something, maybe because of the subject or whatever. So it's we really need support from the international community, because there were rare faculty members who had a chance to be outside of the Iran. And even for just few of them, there is no position in even with organizations that support the scholars at risk, which is really strange, because we are really aware that we are also sad about what's happening in the case of Ukraine, but we hope that at least when they want to invest the scholars for the Ukrainians, they don't cut the scholars from the other countries, because we know that there is a suppression, and also there is no academic freedom in several countries. Let's say, for example, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Yemen, Syria, the countries that they had a war for several years. But unfortunately, it seems that most of the budgets they just cut and devoted to the scientists and scholars from Ukraine. And I hope there will be more attention to the other scholars, especially from the countries that people think that it's calm, there is nothing happening inside of the countries. But to be honest, as we mentioned in this panel, we wanted to make awareness. The suppression is beyond that imagination. Even you have a job, you are under suppression. Imagine that what can happen if you lose your job. Even your family will be under suppression. So it will be really difficult for you to continue. So Azad also is one of the faculty members who received the Scholars at Risk fellowship to be able to leave Iran. almost a year ago. So Azadeh, can you tell us about your experience and how the international community do better in the case of the Iranians?
First of all, I would like to say what SAR, Scholars at Risk, does and other initiatives is very important. The foundations are doing such a great job. Right now, we are in big crisis all over the world. We know what happened in Afghanistan, what is happening in Ukraine, and also other countries. There are some, we all constantly hear news about South America and other places. So what SAR and other organizations are covering is a big, big area and many members who are at risk. So first of all, accountability is not only about organizations who are actually helping us to find our way out of the country. Accountability goes to every member of the academy in democratic countries. So I think this is very important to bring the topic of academic freedom as a very important part of a scholar responsibility into on the stage of the universities. So I know that there are many, I actually have the Philip Strauss Initiative Fellowship, which is a very prestigious and very generous grant. But there is always this problem inside many of these institutions that there is lack of knowledge about the real situation of scholars on the ground when they come out of the country. I don't think it can only be solved by consulting us and taking us into consultations. I think it could actually be solved by using the potential of all these scholars as real members of these institutions. Many of these institutions are not so much BIPOC, to be honest. I think there is a need to use the treasure of the experience all these scholars had before coming out of the country. The other thing I assume is very important is to actually remember the term of equity rather than equality. There is a need for empowerment. There is a need, and I see SAR and other organizations always talk about it, and I think it should be more practiced. There is a need to take care of empowering all those people who came out of the country, any country. There are traumas coming with them. It's not only about leaving your country and your loved ones behind. It is about the traumas you experienced. It is about the power of finding back your identity. And it's also about the students at risk who come out. Right now, for example, DEADE has a very good line for Iranian students. I think it's not enough. I am surprised when I see there is not such a thing in a very big number happening in the States or in North America. I think there is a need to spread this feeling of accountability. And of course, I know and everyone knows it is a big competition for any scholar to get into a position inside universities all over the world. Yes, it is hard to get back on the stage when you leave your position. It is very hard to actually revitalize your achievements through all those years. And this needs hands. This needs, yes, we all have to put hand in hand, all us, like what we are doing right now with the help of ICOIA and other institutions and organizations, but it's also about other members of academy who feel responsible to give some of their power to make empowerment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Azadeh, for really wonderful points. And we had also some colleagues, at least from Scholars at Risk. And also I want to add more. You mentioned about the mental health of these scholars, that they are displaced. It's really, really terrible condition that you leave your country. At least I can say, share my experiences, that When I resigned, I was in Mexico with 2 luggages because I left Iran just for 3 months. And I didn't even have the warm clothes in my luggage because I was expecting that I will come back home in autumn, so I don't really need any of them. So when I resigned and I realized that, okay, my family threatened by the intelligence services of Iran, and I realized that, okay, there is no way to come back home. And of course, I increased my activities doing interviews and all of this, and I blocked all the, maybe even a small window that I could come back home. I just realized, okay, I don't have a visa of any country. I have just 2 luggages, which is just have the, summer clothes and no money. Because as an Iranian, you cannot even have a bank account abroad. And then you just have with few dollars in your pocket saying, okay, where I can go now. And of course, you applied for positions with scholars at risk. And as you mentioned that, it's really competitive. And of course, the selection, I think sometimes is not going in a right direction. And also you just get, alone. And as I mentioned, in 10 months, I couldn't find any position, staying in a country without residency and without salary, how it could be. The mental health problem is one thing that even if you find a job and if you can save your life, it'll be for you forever. And nobody really pay attention to this kind of the issue. And of course, the students that they are outside of Iran, then they face the problem of if they don't have scholarships, the inflation in Iran caused that their family cannot support them very well. So they are in the economical pressure. They don't know how to be able to continue their education since they also did some movement. They don't see any place to come back home and to say, okay, let's come back home and continue in Iran our education. And of course, mental problem. Imagine that protests happening almost every day in your country, and you see that your people are getting killed, that they are much younger than you, that they are teenagers. Of course, you cannot concentrate on your scientific issues. And this is one of the things that people somehow cannot understand, that in your situation, you cannot really as productive as before. And of course, you are also worried about your family, any activity that you are doing. You are really worried that your family will be under pressure and you will not be able to continue. And I hope that this gives an idea that, okay, even as an Iranian, you are not allowed to open a bank account. And imagine that how the sanctions can affect. And maybe that can open a conversation going back to the sanctions, because when Iranians talk about the sanctions, they said that, okay, the sanctions coming from outside of Iran, and the regime is not responsible for that. And I want to open the conversation with Negar, saying, okay, is it really true that the sanctions which is affecting politically and economically the life of the Iranians, and of course in general scientists, is just coming from the international governments and states, or it is just because of the policy and international policy of the regime that cause all this, somehow increasing the effects of the sanctions on Iranians? Please, Negar.
Thank you. Yes, I think the problem of sanctions is predominantly the result of the foreign policy of the Islamic Republic. We don't have time to go through details on each one of them, but practically every policies that Iran has made that resulted in further sanctions or the remaining of the sanctions is because of sometimes a stubbornness and a particularly conservative branch of the Islamic Republic. So when we talk about Islamic Republic, even within the ruling system, there are disagreements. And these disagreements often resulted in the history of the Islamic Republic in the suppression of the reformist sector of the regime. So for example, in 1990s, when the reformists came into power, there were some movements between university academics and the governments, and between universities and between the government of Iran and the United States, in order to remove some of the sanctions, to elevate some of the sufferings that people were having. And actually, academics wanted to have a reconciliation with the government. Like they were saying, okay, you can do whatever you want, but this oppression cannot continue. Now, what happened in late 1990s, is that not only the conservative sector of the Islamic Republic won the debate against the reformists, but they actually eradicated any attempt for the reforms. We went back to a very, very draconian nuclear policies that resulted in further sanctions. And in fact, is another problems that we have in the Islamic Republic, is that those who are connected to the government are making money off the sanctions. So they have connections out of Iran that brings money to their own circles. They sell oil privately. They make quite a lot of deals under the table. And because of that, it's in fact is not bad for the regime. But the money, and I have always maintained that, the money has always been prioritized to the oppressive systems of the regime. So any cents that goes to Iran is now going to be feeding the oppression system that is now ruling the universities, because for the regime, for totalitarian regimes in general, survival is the only goal. So if the goal is that you can keep people in poverty, in fact, many of you can attest that sometimes keeping people in poverty is not necessarily bad for totalitarian states. It makes politicians more appetizing if they come and give you a bag of potatoes, which happened actually in Iran in early 2000s. So populism grows as poverty systematically grows in Iran, and that's so the regime is benefiting from the sanctions, and they continue to create more problem. Then you put money into that and you go, okay, we get rid of the sanctions. That also gives more system and money and breadth to the oppressive regime. So it's one of those problems that if you do it, there is a problem. If you take it out, there's a problem. Totalitarian states don't care about people. It's not democracy to say, okay, we give money to medicine and to eradicate poverty. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be more money into IRGC. It's going to be more power to the regime and more suppressive policies. And they would have money to support them. But what is very interesting is that even the outside of Iran, even outside like the United States and Europe, they have been trying to negotiate with the Islamic Republic too. The problem we have is that conservative core of the politicians in Iran are now practically dominated the whole array of politics with the help of the IRGC. So it's a combination, it's a militarization of universities. And that's why NCA mentioned at the beginning that now they want to have a military office in universities, because now we are moved from a totalitarian system that created silence by politics and by policies to a system that has to now militarize universities. And that is costly because, as you know, security is always costly. So the problems of sanctions pretty much requires a much more of a different panel to discuss, but it's a very challenging issue. And I don't think that regime in either way is going to help the people.
Yeah, thank you so much, Negar, and I hope that clarifies how the sanctions affects the life of the Iranians. Of course, the sanctions are there because of the international policy of the regime, but as you mentioned also, they really love this kind of the sanction. We heard a lot from the many authorities of Iran, even the supreme leader, saying that, okay, the sanctions are the blessing for the country because it helps us to progress, to stand our own feet, and also, especially in the case of the scientific point of view, that they said, okay, it's really good for us to stand our own feet and progress in many things. And we heard also in the time of the corona, they abandoned to have the vaccines from US and UK. It was mentioned explicitly from Supreme Leader, because he mentioned that we can make our own vaccines. And we hear that half of the people that passed away in Iran, that is the 75,000 people, they could be alive now just because of if we had a vaccine imported and if we start the vaccination as sooner as possible. So you see that how an ideology, even in the case of the effect of the sanctions, can affect the life of the whole people, you know, killing people by the name of the sanctions, mentioning that, okay, we don't have a right to import the medicine and the vaccine, but then we realize that no, they wanted to prove that they can do it. So that's how it, for example, also as a physicist, I can mention that the sanctions imposed on Iran because of the nuclear deal that we have. And of course, as a scientist who studied physics, we always nobody inside of the physicists in Iran had the courage to mention to the government that with the country which has the oil and gas sources, and also even the solar sources, we don't really need nuclear energy. But of course, in the Iranian community and among the physicists, nobody had this courage to mention that to government, because we know that what's going to be the consequences. So you see that how an ideology can affect science. Even in the case of the physics, that you cannot really talk about the negative facts of the nuclear energy, that your country didn't really need that. So thank you so much for that. I want also to open another discussion regarding the pressure in the case of the Iranian academics, and people may be supposing that the pressure is just on females and also maybe some LGBTQ community, which is completely hidden community in Iran, and they cannot, of course, talk openly about their gender orientation. But we also know that some ethnics also in Iran under pressure, and also maybe they even lose their right for education. You hear maybe about Baha'is in Iran, that's the one part of the religion which is not accepted in Iran. And I want to go to Farshid to explain us what happened to the Baha'i community in Iran regarding the education? So how their education and science affected after the Islamic regime got the power in 1979. Please.
Thank you so very much, NCA. Well, the point is that I thought that when we're talking about academic oppression and the fact that how the regime employs some measures to suppress science and scientific endeavors, it would be really a regret if we did not mention the names of Baha'is and what is happening to them. Well, they are the most persecuted religious sect in Iran, as we know, and unfortunately, Baha'is cannot go to the university in Iran, as we all know, and so they can have they are trying to have some unofficial universities of their own, but if that network is somehow revealed to the regime, they will all be arrested and sentenced to long years in prison. So that's something that we need to be aware of, and I just wanted to remember. I just wanted us to remember what is happening to them in Iran. Thank you, Nzi.
No, thank you so much, Farshid. It's a really sad story that although this community always try to be really keep silent and also not to directly somehow fight with the regime, but we know that they don't get their right for education, not just in the university level, even in the case of the studies for going to the high school and also these places, they are not really allowed to continue their education. Of course, after being graduated, even if they can be able to continue their education somehow by hiding their religion, not mentioning it in the questionnaires that we always supposed to write our religion. And they didn't mention that they couldn't find job, and if somebody realized that they were Baha'is and they hide it, of course they would be kicked out, and of course even there much more pressure on their families, and we hear that many of them they lost their right for education, and also even when they studied abroad they couldn't find job in Iran when they come back. One question has been asked. I think it's really important to mention that one of the audiences asked that, have you ever tried other ways to fight with the regime that to be able somehow dealing with the regime, to go it in a peaceful way, maybe in the case of the reforming issue? And maybe Azadeh can explain about that. Is it really possible to deal with this kind of the regime? It's a totalitarian regime. Is it really possible? Have you ever tried it? Because people always, when hear about revolution, they always say that, wow, revolution is really, really dangerous issue. Even the name of the revolution scares public. And I of course, the politicians, that's why they didn't really support as much as we really needed in the beginning of the revolution, Human Life Freedom Revolution in September. We expected, of course, more, and of course from the scientific community, support from the academicians regarding what's happening. When people hear about revolution, they really get scared. I said, okay, maybe you could try other things, reforming, dealing with the regime, trying to change. Is it really possible with this totalitarian regime?
Okay, to be honest, I think it is important to get back to the history of resistance in Iran. There is a long history of resistance. It actually starts by the revolution. The revolution in Iran in 1979 was not Islamic revolution. It actually turned into Islamic revolution. It was hijacked by Islamists. So what is happening since then is several people have been resisting in the academia as well. And several members of the academy lost their lives. Several students lost their lives. After the Cultural Revolution, there was a long years of imprisonment of many educated scholars and artists in the prisons of Iran. So yes, they tried their best to work with the system. They tried their best to do their best to actually survive, not for themselves, but rather trying to help their own country and their people that they loved as their comrades, as their family members. So this is a history of resistance. This is a history of trying to actually nourish, give service to your country while resisting a totalitarian system. On the other hand, all of us have already tried that. To be honest, I can say about all the members who are on this panel as the panelists. I have been an assistant professor in the university. NCA have been so. Negar have been a scholar and a brilliant student as long as I know, and then left the country as a scholar. Farshid have been an assistant professor. Sina have been a very active student. So yes, we tried our best. I did my PhD in Switzerland. I went back to my country to actually do my best for the utopia I was searching for. And I think I did as much as I could. There is a moment that the system wants all of you. There is a moment a totalitarian system has its name on it. The totalitarian system needs you, of course, but also wants service from you. The totalitarian system wants all. They cooperate with you as long as they need you. And there are moments that they want to bring you inside this corruption. I don't mean that this happens for everyone. I mean, there is a moment that this will come. Farshid bravely mentioned that he had to leave because he couldn't stay silent for what they were doing to the students. And I think I should mention, I did my best unless the days that they were asking me to write reports on the students who actually left country for sabbatical leaves or faculty members who left country for sabbatical leaves to write reports. I was the international office advisor to write reports about them. What were they doing? I tried my best. I actually revised all the syllabus of the university till the day that I was asked why I actually put choreography inside the syllabus while dancing is forbidden. So am I the one who should say, yes, you're right, dancing is forbidden, let's keep it like that, and kill the dreams of many, many students who are actually longing for dancing, watching YouTube videos, trying to self-learn things, which is actually not possible to do it self-learn as a professional. They are artists. They came to study art. They are not like amateur artists being interested in something. So there is a moment that you have to face the reality. There are solutions. We all tried them. And there are still very brave people, courageous people inside the country who are trying them. We are not the only ones. There are still people who are able to stay. There are still people who are able to keep their profile low. But there is a moment that your profile is not low anymore and you are forced to leave.
Yeah, thank you very much, Azadeh. You mentioned a really great point. And one of the reasons that forced me, somehow encouraged me to resign was that after coming back to Iran, after doing my PhD in Germany in 2012, I also tried to resist, you know, in any sense that I could do that. But the point is that I was, just simple example, I was always putting my picture in my social media without scarf, showing that, okay, I'm not really obeying the compulsory hijab. And I knew that that can face losing my job in Iran, because it's forbidden. Even in social media, you cannot do whatever you want to do. So they are detecting you. And also, of course, I was visiting several institutes outside of Iran, of course, visiting several colleagues that they could report what I'm doing. You know, I'm not wearing hijab when I'm outside of Iran. But when I heard about this of Mahsa, I just said, okay, I could be Mahsa. I knew that the risk of not wearing hijab in social media or abroad could be losing job, but I could never imagine that could be death. So why I should resist, why I should continue working for this regime, even if one person can make a movement, let's just do it. So then I think none of us regret what we have done in our countries, and we are really proud of that. And we hope that the others also that are listening us, be the voice of the Iranians. If you have academic freedom, if you have a voice of the talking about that, please just don't ignore it. Try to, when you see Iranian colleagues, please ask them what's happening in Iran, and then trying to get more information. So we are almost going to the end of the panel. So we have just 3 minutes. I just want to give 1 minute to each of you. And I'm starting with Farshid, if you want to conclude with last minute, what you want to give us as a take-home message from this panel.
Thank you so very much, Ensia, and thank you so very much, everyone. I just wanted to mention that, well, I have this memory right now. I had this lesbian student who said that, well, one day she came to my office and she said that, well, my father has understood that I'm lesbian, and if I return home, he's going to kill me. So I found this opportunity to say that, well, how LGBTQ people are persecuted in Iran, how they are not able to express themselves, and if they come out, they will be punished by death. They can even be punished by death. And that's it. We need the help of the international community. And what is happening right now at the international level, I think that is a disgrace to humanity, to those countries who claim that they are the cradle of human rights in Europe and the West. They have started negotiations with the mullahs, and it's an affront to Iranian people, to those who have put their lives, who have endangered their lives, and to those who have been killed in this struggle for freedom. And we need the help of the international community, especially the academic international community. And I once again call on the academic international community to cut off all the ties with the oppressed. So if you're having a contract with the university in Iran, please kindly note that you're helping the regime. Because right now in Iran, the officials, the authorities, and so on and so forth, they are all close allies of the mullahs. They are all close allies of the IRGC, and they have explicit ties with the intelligence that works in Iran. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Farshid. You mentioned a really great point. If you have any even scientific collaboration, in the case of the economical helping for the system of Iran, please cut them, because we know that these budgets never goes to the academia. It just goes somewhere else that we don't know. So Azadeh, your last sentence, please.
I would like to say, talking about cutting relations, I would like to mention, don't cut your relations with the students. Open your workshops, open your online courses, give the access to free knowledge to all the students of Iran. Help the ones who are actually resisting to have access to democracy, to learn, to give knowledge, to give back their knowledge even, because there is a treasure there and you don't have access to that. So I think stay in connection, but make it through open channels, make it through democratic channels, give chances to students to attend your courses, give chances to participations, and give scholarships. Not all the students are going to stay out of the country. I went back, and there are many who long to go back and change things and make things better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Azadeh. That's really good point. If you give the scholarship to Iranian students, doesn't mean that they will stay in your country forever. Of course, they love their family and their country. Of course, they want to come back and give the service to the society. And I hope that will be really understandable. So Negar, please.
Thank you. Just saying goodbye. Thank you all for organizing this. It has been a privilege and an honor to be with you guys on the panel, to my esteemed panels. And thank you very much for all of you who spent a couple of hours with us and listening to us. I live in New Zealand, and we do have an act in New Zealand that considers academics as the critiques and conscience of society. So our Freedom of Academic Act is actually mentions legally that we are obligated to a degree to be the conscious of society and to raise awareness about this issue. So I want to reiterate all what my panelist says. Yes, consider Iranian students, work with Iranian academics who want to develop their research with you. We do have an oppressive system, and at this stage, there are many scholars who are truly at risk. And I think talk to your colleagues about Iran and about, well, different cases, Afghanistan, and those who are oppressed under totalitarian regimes, and the role of academics and universities in that. But I also am positive and confident that a democratic Iran is coming. We are very close. It has been 4 decades of a struggle through different means, through demands for reforms, through negotiations, through oppositions, through revolutions. So there is quite a lot of different strategies, but a democratic Iran is coming, whether anybody is ready for it or not. And it is a decision that I am very proud to see how the generations after me have taken. And it's a great honor to be in this part of history. So thank you very much. Woman, life, freedom, and all the best. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Negar. I cannot add more. That's our hope. We are fighting for democracy, and of course, having the right for everyone, you know, that's all around the world. And we hope that the revolution that's going to happen in Iran gives also voice to the other countries that they are living under totalitarian regime, to really realize that academic freedom also matters, because if the democracy will be in danger, the academic also will be in danger. So you should be really cautious about that. So if you hear that even in democratic countries, some left parties got the power, be sure that in future your academic freedom also will be in danger. So thank you so much for being with us, and good day and a good night for all of you. Women, life, freedom. Thank you.